And good morning. Coming at you live today. It is April 7th, 2024. Cold as could be out there, so I hope you brought your towel. This is the premiere, the first episode of a little show I'm going to be doing now and then that hopefully we can all have fun with. So I brought your coffee, just kind of lay back on a Sunday morning, and we're going to talk about things that are just ridiculous and fantastic all at the same time. Okay. So the name of this new show is called Sci Fi Shakespeare because as a kid, uh, this stuff was permeated me. It's a comic book channel. I talk about all things media and related. Good morning, John C. And as a kid, it was like I didn't stand a chance. Sci-fi was everywhere. At my age, I remember a little bit of the world before Star Wars, but I definitely remember it after Star Wars so much better, man. Grew up on Planet of the Apes. Sunday mornings in the late 70s, I'd be riding my big wheel around, and my stepdad would go to one of his friends' trailers down the road, and then I would end up going down there after I was on those sunny Sunday mornings, and they always had a double feature going on, right? It was one Godzilla movie and followed by an episode of Star Trek, the original series, and it just went from there, man. Star Wars everywhere, Battlestar Galactica, all these great sci-fi things that were going on. And kind of grew up with all this stuff and everything, right? And what a great time to grow up with this stuff, right? So, with the dawning of the VHS tapes and the video games everywhere, no internet, outside playing around, you had all the toys everywhere to suck you in as a kid. And then on top of all this, you had people playing Dungeons and Dragons, the college kids picking up things. Everybody was talking fantasy and Lord of the Rings, and then they would get into like deep sci-fi stuff. So there were layers. There was layers of sci-fi, and I was a bit of a purist, if you will, right? So when I was talking about the VHS tapes and everything like that, you had access to like Flash Gordon and Alien all in your house and everything. They would market toys to kids from an R-rated horror film set in sci-fi of space called Alien, as you can see, and things like that. And of course, we would bootleg the tapes. The stepdad would get with one of his buddies. His buddies would bring over a VHS tape, and by like 1984, I think maybe even 83, they had figured out how to hook up two VCRs to bootleg tapes, right? So some of the first sci-fi that was in the house uh, that everybody shared was, of course, Flight of Dragons, the cartoon, which I know is a bit fantasy, but it also talks about science, the science way. It's science versus magic. How do dragons really work? And then we had Light Years. So this is 1985. This particular VHS tape. It's the only one that survived. Light Years is based on Gandahar. It is Gandahar, a French cartoon that came over here, and Isaac Asimov helped translate a little bit and give it some facts and stuff to where we had people like Bridget Fonda and Super, I think even Meryl Streep might have been in doing the voiceovers, which is fantastic. It's on YouTube for free. Warriors of the Wind. This is the original cut that came to America from Studio Ghibli's first movie, Nausicaa of the Wind. And it's a very important movie to me because, like, it is a horrible cut with horrible acting, but it made me kind of pay attention to anime a little bit. And then the great classic heavy metal of 1980 with uh, just the heavy metal magazine movie, if you will, where we got to see a little bit of Mobius animated. We got to see Bernie Wrightson animated, and all these great things. And very cool, right? So yeah, sci-fi. We're just going to be on there now. The cool thing about this is the first thing I picked is some low-hanging fruit. Okay, you cannot swing a stick on the internet without finding a fandom site, without finding tons of people who have gone after this book and dissected it and talked about it and stuff in booktube communities. And Wisecrack has a great review by a thug that reviews books or something like that, right? There are older videos and stuff, and they're all over the place, right? And I don't usually go after low hanging fruit and stuff, right? So why did I pick Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? Because I have loved this book since the 90s, right? And it's come into all sorts of media. All right, I'm going to show you all sorts of ways you can experience Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? So a little history on the book and how I came across it and hearing about it stuff, right? But the fantastic thing about this is that I do have to give a little background about what I was watching on TV. Back in the days when you had NBC, ABC, CBS, and a little thing called PBS, and if you had the money to get a box that had three buttons on it, you could get Showtime or HBO, right? And PBS back then was a much different beast. I'm not sure what it is now. But back then you had things like Austin City Limits, which I know is still around, where you got to see these fantastic bands. And then they would show like these shows that I don't know what they were, but they would introduce you to people that you wouldn't normally see playing music on TV in these hour concerts. That's where I found Leon Redbone, right? But then they also had things come over from England, right? And I meant to look it up, man. But like you would get these variety sketch shows from England over here to America, right? And that's where the stepdad and all his friends would pile up in the living room and they were watching Monty Python. There was a sketch show that'll probably hit me later where it was three brothers, and in the opening credits, there were three of them on one bike riding around doing wacky stuff. And then Doctor Who was all mine. It came on at 6 o'clock. Now, Doctor Who is actually where I discovered Mr. Douglas Adams before I knew anything at all, right, about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy started out as a radio play, I think in 1978, over in Great Britain. And then they released a book, his first novel. And as you can see, what I'm showing you here, as I'm getting all excited, is this is my volume of Douglas Adams' trilogy of 5 books or 6 books or something like that. But this is the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide with all the books and the sequels there. Okay, 5 complete novels. Right, I'll get there. Right. So basically, I'm watching Doctor Who. I'm sucked in. And I don't know anything about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know about the book that's over in England in 1979. It hits in America in 1980. But I'm watching Doctor Who, and they're doing reruns of the Tom Baker years, right? That's my Doctor Who. And I started out with Space Ark, right? That season where they actually have told one long story with Sarah Jane and whoever the dude was and stuff, right? And it was like one long story, one adventure, one would lead right into the other, action packed, right? And then eventually I would see like iRobot. They had them a little bit mixed up. They weren't really telling them in chronological order, right? And then from what I remember, they didn't show the entire Key of Time season, right? Because Douglas Adams worked on Doctor Who. And that whole season had a complete feel. I think he was like story editor and he did like some of the actual scripts, the Pirate Planet. But my favorite Doctor Who was this probably a season before when we had the savage sidekick, if you will, running around with him from the face of evil. So to go from the face of evil with Layla and to skip ahead there, all of a sudden I'm seeing the Pirate Planet, and all of a sudden this has a totally new feel to it. It feels a little ridiculous, but we're being serious at the same time. And the Tom Baker Doctor Who is a bit bohemian, so there was some levity to it, right? And then I see City of Death. And I did not know this was Douglas Adams, but I could tell this was different, right? Like, I'm like, even at like, I think by the time I watched it, I was about 8 or 9 years old. And all of a sudden it was like, I felt like the Tom Baker may have peaked. It was like a brilliant episode. So in the real world, as a little kid, 7, 8, 9 years old and stuff, as the book seems to be growing, my mom would have a friend who would like start talking about things like Babelfish and Ford Prefect and stuff, and nobody knew what she was talking about, including me. The years go by, 85, 86, 87, I hit high school. Now I'm really starting to hear about this book, and people around me are really talking about it and stuff, right? But it's mostly like teachers fresh out of college and stuff. And like I said, there's no real deep, meaningful memories here, right? Until the 90s. And then all of a sudden in the 90s, things were happening, right? I'm finding comic book shops that I can drive to or they're in the area and stuff, right? And they have bootleg VHS tapes that you can find of like shows, one specials and shows and TV shows. The Prisoner, Legend of the Superheroes from like 1978. That was like basically Challenge of the Super Friends as a laughing comedy show or something, a little special, whatever. I'm horrible. I'm talking about these horrible bootleg Doctor Who, just on VHS tapes and stuff, right? Then I look around and stuff and I see this, right? This is my second set. I think I'm positive I got this around 94, I think. Right. So all of a sudden we have these 3-issue prestige series. Like, this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. a 3-issue prestige format square-bound book that does a retelling, an adaptation of this book that I've been hearing about and people absolutely loving. And then it also, there were 6 issues in there where we also get to see the Restaurant at the End of the Universe, the second one that picks right up at the end of the first book. And so I get to have visuals of these characters, right? And then it had to be around 97, right? To be completely honest with stuff. I did read the book after those, but I think I got it like from a library or something, right? I didn't pick it up. And when I read it, I read the thing in 3 days. It was a magnificent read. It was brilliant. It was light. It was satire. I love the format. I love the point of views, and it had like that dry English humor, I guess, right, with a touch of ridiculousness of it, right. So then all of a sudden I'm going flea marketing, and I find this book for $5. It still has in pencil the $5, which probably won't be able to show up because it's faded. The pages are yellowed in this stuff, right? And as you can see, I made it this far into the book, which is why I am saying I have not read all 5 books, because I've ended up reading the first book probably about 6 times since I've had this. I keep backing up. And I marked some passages I'm going to read and stuff, right? So I read this book and it's just in time. And I find this and it's just in time because I end up going back to college around, I don't know what year it was, 2000, 2001. And I end up taking these night classes through Virginia Tech. I have to drive an hour, depending on where I get off at work, where I'm traveling, an hour to an hour and a half to go to these classes. And I'm getting home at 1 o'clock. So what do I end up finding? Well, it turns out an English lit teacher where we did creative writing and stuff uh, for what my degree. I was trying to go for psychology at the time. We did this creative writing and stuff, and immediately we somehow run across each other where she asks everybody what their favorite authors are, and I bring up Douglas Adams, and she stops everything. I don't know if all people are old enough to remember this, but and maybe you still can do it. But I've had one desktop computer from 2001 to about, I think it lasted me to about 2011, 2012, we'll say a decade. And you could actually name your computers. Okay. And this English lit teacher let me know that she had named her computer Ford Prefect, who is a character here we'll talk about in a minute. And we ended up having all kinds of talking. And I don't know if she gifted it to me or what happened, but all of a sudden in my possession, I had the audio cassette, which I just sold last year, I believe, or ran across it with Lord of the Rings stuff. But I found the the first 2 books on audio cassette, audiobooks and stuff. And I still had a car with tapes in it, and I had one up until about 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, that had one audio, right? So I got to listen to this over and over. In the meantime, we skip ahead a few years, and in 2005, the movie comes out. And by the time I am well versed now in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and most things Douglas Adams and stuff, my whole goal for this is to please don't suck. There are certain things in the book, I'm like, if they hit these highlights, it'll be good, which I feel like they did for the most part, right? But around the same time, thanks to that movie coming out, we got this from 1981 that showed in Britain, and this ties back again to Doctor Who, right? This is the television show that they did on BBC with a very low budget of the first 2 books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Restaurant at the End of the Universe, if I remember right. And if I'm going to recommend anything for anyone to watch, I have no idea where this is on any streaming sites. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but this is my favorite version to watch. Now, I'm going to warn you, if you have seen those 70s and 80s Tom Baker Doctor Who's, and you know about the budget, you know about the practical special effects made with bubble wrap that you ship things in spray paint, it feels like it's the same people. Basically, I'm assuming the BBC has one at the time, had one special effects department, right? But it's just brilliant, and it's much more faithful. Now, with everything I've said, and I've sat here and told you that I'm so well versed, and I've ran across people for years, and the magic of this Douglas Adams book, this is one of the few books that when you run across people, that it has the effect that certain cult movies do. When you run across people who talk about Monty Python, and they start bringing up the Holy Grail, you'll end up spending hours quoting the movie if you don't watch. When you see them, if you work with them, you end up throwing them out here and there. It's just a flesh wound. If you watch Big Lebowski, you end up doing the same thing with it. Well, this is the only book that I ran across where I could talk to people and we end up quoting things over there, right? So as I back up here and you're watching this, and we're about to dive in a little bit, I'm going to let you know that, yeah, I'm sort of versed in it. But what has happened is in all the media that I've told you that this thing has popped up in, they all mix up in my head because it's sort of like this whole book, this whole story is like a living document. It changes. It's been adapted so many times with Douglas Adams' hands in it that there's little tweaks here and there. The movie has three characters that aren't even in the book. It has scenes where it's combined things, right? The radio plays, the radio play to the book, things changed, right? So where I have shown you this, where I have read the comic, where I've read the first book several times compared to everything else, where I've listened to the audiobooks, three different versions of audiobooks are out there. I don't know if I read this, did the same one in the 90s and the same one 10 years ago, right? That they all sort of meshed in my head into a completely unique organic thing, because my curse and my gift is the fact that when I watch anything, when I read anything, I end up getting like this big picture. And I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I've used this example before. Jeff Bridges, right? Take the movie Jeff Bridges, right? Came out around 1970. He had a movie called 1973. It's called The Last Picture Show, right? So in my mind, in The Last Picture Show, that character of Jeff, he's never a character, right? He's always Jeff Bridges in every movie. So in my mind, I have got this story to where he leaves The Last Picture Show, goes off to college, pops up in the King Kong movie of the 70s as that college professor with the beard and stuff, right? And then he pops up several years later and against all odds and has this big love affair, right? And that big love affair and stuff, he ends up dying and he is recreated. His body is recreated with some of his memories in Starman, right? You follow me? And then we move forward to some more movies and stuff, all the way to where Big Lebowski is actually Starman, right? And then all of a sudden, a few years later, Big Lebowski ends up dying, but he is regenerated again with Starman powers, and he's a country singer, but he's singing at bowling alleys. That's a real movie. And then, of course, we get to R.I.P.D., where he has died, but he thinks he's a cowboy, and he's having memories of True Grit because he escaped R.I.P.D., where he's a cop in the afterlife and gets reincarnated for True Grit. Even though that's not the exact ways that the movies are, this is what my brain does. This is why I collect comic books and read things and stuff like that and keep up with writers and read these books and stuff, right? So we're going to check comments, and then I'm actually going to, the difference with this show that I'm calling Sci Fi Shakespeare. This is episode 1. I'll be making a playlist to keep these up as we do these. I'm actually going to be like reading some excerpts from book, and I'm not going to kill you, man. It's not going to be like a dry reading. We're going to hit the high points, right? So let's see who is here, who has braved themselves to check out a new experiment, if you will. Let's see if this is going to work. And we have StreamYard being a little stubborn here, so bear with me. There we go. All right, as always, like, subscribe, thumbs it up. Hit that bell to alert like John C. He is here 99.9% of the time. First one in there. Good morning to you, and I appreciate you, man. Fireball Comics, good morning. And then we have Fireball Comics is saying I've never seen those Hitchhiker's Guide to Comics. Didn't know they existed. Right, that's what made this show happen. Dennis is here. Good morning, Dennis. Great. Yep, well, he loves Hitchhiker's Guide. That's what I mean. This all is connected. Pete Davidson, the Fourth Doctor, appeared in the TV show Dish of the Day. I wonder if I know that or not, right? Because I completely forgot that Tom Baker also showed up in the Narnia BBC TV movies and stuff that I have on DVD. Stuff like that kind of escapes me around then, even though it's my thing. All right. 42. That's right. 42. This is what I'm talking about. People who know this and read the book. This is the things you will randomly hear people shouting at each other. The Sumerian is here. Good morning. And we, yeah, see, Friar Tuck, that's awesome with Jeff Bridges. Good morning. This is what my brain does to me. I connect things that aren't there. And if I really did a deep dive, I would keep going. And I think it would be cool to actually tie Jeff Bridges movies together somehow. If I had the editing uh, skills, I would rather lead a team to do that. I hear you. I did potential crossovers all the time, my own mind with TV shows and movies, right? So before we get into Hitchhikers, I'm going to respond to that. So indulge me for just 1 second. By the time I was like about 15, all right, I had this idea in my head that I was dying to see, and I knew it wouldn't happen. But I wanted to take all those failed sci-fi and I don't know shows from the late 70s and 80s that I was able to watch here and there and make one great big huge TV movie. And it would be The Man from Atlantis, The Misfits of Science, Manimal, Automan, Greatest American Hero, and I'm forgetting one or two there. And I wanted this great big huge movie. And I know in the back of my mind I must have been influenced for at 12 years old from reading Crisis on the Infinite Earth. That's probably where my taste of trying to connect all these characters probably came from. But anyway, moving on, getting back here to Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Right. For everybody that's popped in, I want to reiterate I am what is the word I'm looking for? I'm not trustworthy a little bit, right? There's a word for a narrator that you can't trust when you read a book, and that's what I am now. And I've already said it in this. Let me get a cup of coffee early in the morning, guys. 8:05 is when we started this morning. Unreliable narrator. I knew the caffeine would do it, right? Because, like I have said, is that I've read or experienced all of this since the 90s, and they all sort of mesh in together, right? So basically, the basic plot, and the reason I think it is brilliant, is that you can actually read this book in two ways, right? So basically, we start out, depending on what you read, sometimes I think it's in the comic, they have a prologue where this lady just wakes up in the morning and all of a sudden it's like she in her mind she has the answer to life and the universe and everything in it, and she knows about peace and how to bring people together and how she can almost see the future with how everything makes sense, and then the world blows up, right? But if we start it proper, we start with Arthur Dent, Englishman, the little house, and he's in his robe, and all of a sudden he hears a construction crew outside with a bulldozer is going to take his house down, and he runs outside and he's going to stop them, and he actually lays down, and the construction crew is just sort of like, hey man, down the street in town in the basement of the mayor's office in the town hall downstairs and everything like that, we've posted it that your house was due for demolition today. And he's like, it's not going to happen. And all of a sudden Ford Prefect, his best friend, comes over, picks him up, takes him, gets him out of there, and takes him to the bar and tries to get him to eat peanuts and beer. And he's telling him that you've been nice to me, you're my friend, I'm going to save you, because today the world is going to end. And he just thinks it's ridiculous. So just to move along real quick, I'm not going to like spoil the book for you, but to move it on and stuff like that. But the oh, good grief, am I going to forget the basic, the first aliens? Oh my God. So anyway, we'll move forward. Aliens show up. They've taken up and they make the announcement that Earth is due for demolition due to making a super space highway, right? So now we see how Arthur Dent, who is basically considered nobody with no power, that's how the Earth is seen in the universe, right? Because they were warned that the demolition was scheduled a couple decades ago, and they could have went to this planet in the galaxy of Betelgeuse or something and found out about it and been able to stop it. And the Earth is destroyed, but Ford Prefect has saved Arthur Dent because Ford Prefect is actually an alien who adapted the name. He took the name Ford Prefect from a car because when he landed on the planet, he saw so many cars, he thought that was the species. He was here on Earth doing research for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, let me tell you what that is, right? Basically, in real life, supposedly the story is, and you can see if it's on Wikipedia, so it must be real. But I do remember talking about it with said English teacher that I talked about earlier in the video. But basically, hitchhiking used to be a culture, and this was actually something that made me kind of dodge the book. Just not have an interest, not dodge. Didn't actively dodge, but just had no interest in the book. But I have hitchhiked. I spent most of '92 hitchhiking up and down the coast and stuff, right? But hitchhiking was actually almost a culture from the hippie generation there, the 60s and 70s. A lot of people that ended up in San Francisco, California, walked right outside. Robert Crumb was one. Robert Crumb, for you guys who the underground artist, that's how he left his first wife. They just stepped outside, started thumbing all the way across the country. There's a song called Chevy Van about picking up a hitchhiker and stuff, right? Different world back then, right? I don't think people really came across the dangers of this thing, but like I said, everybody had the same goal, same time, flower children. It went on for years to the point that even in Britain, they had a thing called the Hitchhiker's Guide, right? And Douglas Adams, around in the early 70s, actually had one of those books, had it in a field, and came up with the idea of, God, look at the galaxy out there. What does it all mean? And wouldn't it be great that if we could travel and have a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? That was the seed of the story. There were actual Hitchhiker's Guide and a whole culture of hitchhiking. Today, I think the biggest thing may be the Appalachian Trail and hiking and stuff from what I've seen out there, right? Somebody help me with the alien's name. I've tried to stall so I could remember it. I'm just going blank because it's live. Anyway, and this is actually between the movie and the books where things get different because they take those aliens that destroyed the world. Oh my God, the Volgons. This is just horrible, right? But anyway, they became a bigger antagonist in the movie than they were in the book. They were just a way to go, right? So Ford Prefect ends up being hitchhiking him out of there, and you have to have beer and peanuts to supply the body with much needed minerals that get drained. And he ends up telling him that he works for the company that makes the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is like an electronic book, and on the front cover it says "Don't panic." And then we start getting excerpts as we read about many, many things that are out there in the universe. And this is where the brilliance of Douglas Adams comes out, right? And the first thing that popped me, the first thing that has to be out there is how all the alien creatures out there in space are able to communicate things, right? And there's a thing called the Babelfish, right? I might end up reading that a little bit, right? But the Babelfish is a fish that actually goes in your ear and translate. It feeds off brainwaves and stuff, and the symbiotic relationship there is that it will telepathically, mentally, whatever, that you understand everything and everyone. Now, this is the brilliance of it, right? If you go back and read the Bible about the Tower of Babylon and stuff, everybody used to talk the same language, and when Babylon fell and everything like that, everybody started getting different languages, and that supposedly is one of the reasons that the language barriers is what causes so many problems and things, right? Well, it turns out with the Babelfish, uh, as we look into the Hitchhiker's Guide that he gives us, it turns out that the Babelfish is one of the reasons that there were some of the biggest and the bloodiest wars ever. It ends up making a no difference at all. Having everyone able to talk might actually make things worse. That's how ridiculous we are in coming up with excuses and stuff, or however you want to interpret what Douglas Adams is saying. Because what happens is that he acknowledges that as a plot device, it's so convenient. The Babelfish is so convenient that it must be an act of God, thus having people discuss religion and God must be real or he's not real just by the existence of the Babelfish. And then we move on. So things go bad with the aliens, which I cannot believe I'm going blank on and stuff. And then we get some more characters. Zaphoid Breeblebox, who is a two-headed man who is president of the universe, and his sidekick Trillian, who will end up being the last female who Arthur Dent actually knew from a party a few years ago. And this is where I get a little mixed up about how they met because it's a little different in several places. But Arthur Dent was at a party, And he met Trillian, and Zaphoid Beeblebox popped up and took her away. But he didn't know didn't know that nobody knew he was an alien. And he ends up being the cousin of Beeblebox, and he became the president of the galaxy just so he could get a hold of a ship called Heart of Gold that has a improbability drive, right? And this is where the movie started to fall apart for me. Now, this movie came out in 2005. Sam Rockwell plays Zaphoid Beeblebox. And Zaphoid does have two heads, right? It's even on the cover of some of the books and stuff, right? Well, they changed it in the movie. And they also made him a moron. Basically, what they skipped out on is that in the book, Zaphoid is a much more dynamic and really sophisticated, more character, despite having like this rock and roll demeanor, I guess, like that. In order to become president, they scan your brain to make sure you're not a nut. And he actually removed pieces of his brain to get through to get this ship, which has this improbability drive. So there's people after them for the ship. There's people after Arthur Dent and stuff, right? And things happen. But the main thing is that we come to find out that there's a computer named Deep Thought, and a program was initiated 7.5 million years ago. And it turns out the Earth was the actual computer because Deep Thought was built by people who want to know what was the answer to life, the universe, and everything that we wonder about. And he came up with the number 42 because nobody knew what that was, how that meant, or how that worked. So Deep Thought, the computer, told them, you don't understand the question you're asking. So they built a computer to decipher what the question is to life, the universe, and everything. And it would take 7.5 million years. And it turns out that the planet Earth and all the people on it, that's the program. And the lady who died right at the moment the Earth blew up was the culmination of that 7.5 million years. And now people are going to be trying to track down Trillian and Arthur Dent, mostly Arthur Dent, because they think that they can take his brain apart. The people who hired the computer to do it uh, decide that they're going to, we'll just take his brain out and look into it, and we'll find out the answer to the life, universe, and everything in there. So we find out that mice, of all things, we get into point of views and more ridiculous stuff, right? It turns out that humans are not the smartest thing on the planet. They're actually the third smartest. We have dolphins and mice. Dolphins and mice are much more intelligent than us. As a matter of fact, dolphins were trying to tell us that the end of the world was coming. And we took it as like they were just doing tricks for us at SeaWorld. We didn't understand their point of view. And we think we've been experimenting on mice in labs, and it turns out they've been experimenting with us. They're the ones that paid to have this computer made, 7.5 million. So you ask why I'm wearing a towel, right? So as they're hitchhiking around, you have to have a ship to jump on and stuff like that. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy actually tells you one of the most calming things and important pieces of items you can have on you is a towel. This shows that you're prepared, and it actually shows experience and stuff to other hitchhikers and stuff. Like I said, I'll go through some excerpts here and stuff, right? So, do you have your towel? Arthur Dent had woke up in the morning. He's still in his pajamas, and he's in his bathrobe. And he's taking things so serious. And they're trying to tell him that everything in the universe really doesn't matter that much. It's just, it's everything goes, that it happens on its own and stuff. Things are probable, improbable. Things are going to happen. There's a bigger universe out there and stuff, right? And all this, as it is with satire and stuff, you can read this straight through and laugh your ass off, or you can like stop for a minute and be like, that was deep. That is the magic of Douglas Adams in this book. So we meet Slarty Bartfest, right? So basically, the improbability drive in the Heart of Gold, you hit the button, and they showed this very well in the actual movie and stuff. And forces of the universe go to work where you don't know where it's going to happen because, there's probable things, but this is the improbability drive. You don't know where you're going to end up. And long story short, they end up at a planet. And this planet is part of their quest to where they're going to find out who made the Earth. I kind of skipped ahead a little bit, right? And of course, they are attacked. There are 2 nuclear bombs coming at them. But where the improbability drive was hit to save their life, they spontaneously turned into a a sperm whale and a bowl of petunias that are just floating there. And this is where I became a fan of the book proper, because it was just brilliant what they did, what Douglas Adams did with 2 pages of this, right? They're saved from the missiles coming at them, and they go on with their story, and then he takes us back to where we have a sperm whale that's falling and the bowl of petunias. And as the sperm whale is falling, he is trying to figure out who he is, what his place in the universe is, and he's naming things. I'll call this falling. And oh, what's that coming at me? That must be the ground. And as he's falling through the air and everything like that, and he's trying to figure out life and his existence and what is the meaning and what am I and what are these things around me, he hits the ground and he explodes. And then the petunias goes, oh no, not again. It it hits the ground also. The perfect metaphor, and it's the perfect, I don't know, it's the perfect way to talk about the human race. Okay, we're here for a short time and we waste a lot of time trying to figure things out. And then there's this idea of this petunias where you have those old souls in life or something, that little mystery in life where, oh no, not again, they're just done, like they've been through it before, and bam, life is exhausting. Oh, not again. So I'll probably read a little bit about that and give you a taste of some of this. And of course, we get to see how things are manufactured and how all of a sudden we have a sense of importance we think that we have because we may know the universe and everything that's in it. We may have the answer to what does it all mean. Slarty Bartfast actually works or runs the company that makes planets. He talks about all the awards he had won for Sweden. He loves to design coastlines and stuff, and he talks about who commissioned him and his company and all these people to make the planet Earth. And they're going to maybe make another one. Now, the movie skips ahead, and we have a new Earth looking exactly like it did at the end of the movie. That didn't happen until about the 4th book, I think, in the books. There's more adventures to be had. Okay, so all of a sudden, Arthur was like, you know what? And he has this fantastic, and this is what I'm saying. Each of the whatever media you have, they have to. You read the book, you know what the important parts are when you read this. To me, it's the Babel fish, the improbability drive, the whale, and the bowl of petunias, and then we have this little talk that he has with Slaughter. Arthur Dent has Slaughter Bart, whatever. Excuse me, and Slarty Bartfast, right? That he talks with him with, right? And he's like, you know what? I always had this sense of something else was going on out in the universe. Things that just was in the back of my mind. I could feel it buzzing around me. And Slarty Bartfast does another thing where he pops his bubble. He's like, no, man, that's just common paranoia. Everybody has it. There's nothing really that much bigger going on out there. Life just goes on. Enjoy it while you're here. And I was just like, oh, and that was just brilliant. And other little things. There's also a page in this that I had marked for years. And of course, when I get around to finally talking about this book, of course, either the bookmark, as you can see, I have many in here, has slid into the book or it fell out. There's a one page that I absolutely love where we're getting some exposition, a little philosophy there, just a page there in the middle for a little breather, a little break there. And it says things like, man eventually came out of the trees. A lot of people thought this was a mistake, but even more people thought the fact that we came out of the ocean was a bigger mistake. We shouldn't have even gone that far. And there's so much ridiculous in there. There's a passage in there where, the cycle, we get to see a little bit of the Hitchhiker's Guide itself, talking about a planet they land on. And we find out that there's a race of aliens who have so many arms that they ended up inventing the aerosol deodorant before they invented the wheel because of the smell. There's also this planet that has a philosophy that the universe was created from a sneeze, and they live in fear of the great hanky coming in and wiping them out. And I'm bringing that part up because those are the little highlights and the touches that need to be read and not missed. The actual things, the world building and the little trivia, the ridiculousness of it that is actually commenting on everything we hold important that is so life and death. He kind of takes the piss out of it a little bit and lets you know, hey man, just live your life. It's going to be all right. This is the only book I read that I feel it relieves stress. It actually like calms my mind. It makes you think and laugh at the same time, and that is money well spent. But the thing about the movie, And let me be honest with the movie, right? This movie came out in 2005. I was excited. Douglas Adams had died years before. I felt sad that he did not get to see his creation be made into a movie because I don't know if it was hype or if it was real, but apparently that was his dream. So I think this came out about 4 years after he passed away. And I was like, as long as it doesn't suck, as long as we see the dolphins, the babblefish, the sperm whale, the petunias, things like that, we're good, you know. Well, little did I know that the only two characters that I feel like they got right, one of these Slarty Bartfast, were maybe Arthur Dent and Marvin the Paranoid Martian. We're going to talk about Marvin the Martian, the Paranoid Android. Thank you very much, Marvin the Martian. Too much in my head, right? So anyway, they had Sam Rockwell play Zaphoid Breeblebox. They had Zoe Deschanel come in and play Trillian, and she's not even British. That's kind of bothered me. And I'm not even want to get into the casting of Ford Prefect. They really messed it up. But the thing is when this came out, I was so grateful for a movie. I could look over those things, right? They did not give Zaphoid Breeblebox two heads. They had it where he had a head and a beard, and he acted like this old rock star that was an idiot. And then he would slide his head back like a Pez dispenser, and his beard would become the top hair for his other head. You know, he was a Pez dispenser. I was like, what are they doing? So I'm fine with the movie. It is what it is. We have all these other things. I have the TV show, which I think is the way to go if you can handle cheap practical effects, which don't bother me. But this movie, you know, I'm fine with it. So I watch it several times over the years. And then something happened last year, about 6 months into it. I could not do it. I cannot watch the movie anymore. I can't do it. I'm like, oh my God. This was made by Disney, by the way, one of their smaller companies or other companies that makes movies. Tries, I can't remember what it was. I don't know if you're into all that stuff, right? But I didn't realize Disney had made this movie, and it made $100 million. So I guess not. I guess it wasn't a big waste. But you know, it is what it is. It's been done. It is out there. I'm not going to trash it. You need to give it a chance to see if it put your taste on there, right? So that's basically all I'm going to kind of tell you about the story because I hit the high points and there's all kinds of great little things to move you forward. And it does lead into the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is just as I would read those first two books and then decide if you want to move on. So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, absolutely love it. It's my comfort level. There's also video games, right? And I've actually got notes here, right? I want to throw a few more things at you. And then I want to kind of read a few little passages here, right? So here's the legacy of it, right? The babblefish, a creature used in the novel that feeds on brain waves, can instantly translate alien language, inspired the name Babblefish, the first free online language translator in 1997. Radiohead, Paranoid Android. Marvin, the Paranoid Android, is Eeyore, if you know Winnie the Pooh. And he is hilarious. We're going to die. He's everything that he's the biggest emotion in here. He's the biggest downer that you just want, that you just love when he walks into the scene. You know, most downers you want to run from, like, oh gosh, Debbie Downer, there's a big cloud. No, he is hilarious. And actually, when they go to the restaurant that is literally at the end of the universe, where the universe is about to end, but you can get a reservation at a table and watch it over and over because they can control time a little bit. Uh, he gets there the long way. He has lived billions of years just waiting on them in this planet. You know, it's just fantastic. Um, Radiohead's Paranoid Android. And I'm acting like everybody loves this album, right? I've got all the Radiohead's Paranoid Android is just freaking brilliant from 1997. Was named after Marvin's nickname. In the album, it appears on his OK Computer. It's part of a line spoken by Zaphoid to Eddie at the heart of Gold Computer. Trillian is an instant messaging app from 2000 on. Tau Day is celebrated every year on May 25th as a tribute to Douglas Adams. I should have waited. I didn't know there was a holiday. Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster was launched in space in the maiden flight of the Falcon Heavy rocket. It had the words "Don't panic" on the dashboards and carried, amongst other items, the novel and a towel. So it's been into space, apparently. 2022, the novel was included on Big Jubilee Read, list of 70 books by Commonwealth authors selected to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of Elizabeth II. I have no idea what that is. The novel's popularity and the entire Hitchhiker's franchise has contributed to many homages and references involving the number 42, ranging from the numerous mentions in pop culture to frequent mentions of novels whenever the number 42 is addressed in Western media. So this thing has had an effect. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you something that may save you some time, because one of the reasons I had the book on my mind is that I actually knew that 42 was a made up, ridiculous answer for the life and the meaning of everything. Yet something strange kind of happened. It was the fact of just having an answer and wondering if there could be like a coincidence here actually had me thinking of a few things, along with other people that have done this, right? So I did end up trying to look it up, and it was actually one of the first things I tried to look up when the internet went broadband and not dial-up. I remember this. I was at community college. I was alumni, so I would go in there and use their internet, and that's where I was watching YouTube and stuff in 2006 and 7 before I jumped on here a few years later. And basically, I was looking around on the internet, and supposedly Douglas Adams had a bunch of mathematicians, not he did not have them, but a bunch of mathematicians put it upon themselves, and they were looking at different ways and exponents and everything of what number 42 could mean to the universe mathematically, and supposedly they saw a few coincidences. We're back to that point of view, okay, of light that is reflected in the book in certain places and stuff, right? And finally, he just had to tell them if it's true or not. It's on the internet, so you know it must be true. He said, basically, I was typing away, needed a ridiculous answer, stared outside the window at my garden, and went, 42, that's good enough. And he moved on. There was really no thought to it, just the random number that popped in his head. And somehow, as ridiculous as this stuff is, as great as his writing is, and everything like that, of course, that makes perfect sense now. It's 42. I don't know why, but it's there. So let me take a second here, get all this information together, see if there's anything I want to bring up, see if there's anything I have forgot about. Actually, there is one thing. The movie. I sit here and sort of told you I was fine with the movie for over 15 years. The book came out in Britain 45 years ago. Yeah, things like that. But the movie does have 2 or 3 characters. The Vorgons, is that the aliens that I keep forgetting? But anyway, the movie does have 2 or 3 characters that do not appear in the book, but one stands out more than the others, right? The one that I find absolutely amazing is John Malkovich's character. His character, John Malkovich, did so well with the character that he had that I didn't even question if it was in the book or not when I was watching the movie. I picked up on things that were in the movie that weren't right. There's a point of view gun that doesn't exist in the book, things like that. But John Malkovich is sort of like this political religious leader of this planet. Maybe it's a cult or something, right? And he looks like the book. I mentioned the book came out 78, 79. Well, there's a band called the Buggles. They had the first video on MTV called Radio Killed the Video Star, right? And so help me, with the goggles and the fuzzy hair that John Malkovich is wearing, I'm like, he's a Buggle. And he plays this character so serious. He was a political opponent of Zaphoid Beeblebox, who he was trying to be president of the galaxy and stuff. And he's at this table and everything. And he references that religion that I told you that I think pops up at the beginning of the second book, where the universe was sneezed and they worry about the big hanky. Well, he stands up when everybody's about to eat dinner. Actually, it felt like a scene out of the Ice Pirates, now that I think about it. They're all at a dinner table. Never mind, I'm switching movies on you. Anyway, so he's standing there and he's talking, and he does this prayer with everyone where, how they say amen comes out like he's slinging snot a little bit, or maybe he's getting that hanky there and stuff and everything like that. He took it serious and made it into something. And then all of a sudden we get the big sci-fi special effects thing where we find out he's half a body, and he's all creepy. He's got a bunch of crab legs, mechanical crab legs, dozens of them, moving him all around the table and stuff, right? But yeah, now that I'm sitting here talking to you, I picked up that felt like I was watching Ice Pirates during a dinner scene they had, where a guy could remove his head. So all I have is like the memories. I could keep talking about characters and go round and round, but I have things to do today, and I'm sure you do too. And I would like for everybody to check this out. If you're watching in, and everybody is showing up, so let's. So what I'm saying is that this is the new show called Sci Fi Shakespeare. I'm going to be doing every now and then. The rainy day Sunday show is still going to be around. Haul videos are still going to be around. All the things I sort of do are still going to be around. But this is the first episode of Sci Fi Shakespeare. And I picked that name for you guys popping up because I didn't know that science fiction and Philip Jose Farmer and all these little things I read as a kid and watched on TV and stuff, I didn't know they were lowbrow. And I really don't care. I still don't. Yet we have Shakespeare, right? And I do feel like if Shakespeare was writing today, it would be television and this kind of stuff, right? So Sci-Fi Shakespeare is the show where we talk about, I pick something, sci-fi, could be movies, TV, or all of the above, comics and everything like that, anything that goes on there. I want to be talking about Spaceballs one day. I would love to be talking about Blade Runner. I might do a show where it's all the sci-fi and great movies that came out in 1982. 1982 in my lifetime is the year that I think was the greatest year in movies. Despite people telling me 1989 was, and I can go show you all the DVDs and movies that came out. It's gonna be that kind of thing. So if you're watching in the future, or you're watching now, and you have something sci-fi you want to talk about and want to come on, or you want me to talk about it, if I have it, leave it in the comments. I will take requests for this show, and if it works, it works. I'll do it if it works. So anyway, we'll do the comments, and we'll probably have to go and let me know if you kind of like the show because, like I said, it's an experiment. It's different. Oh yeah, I got to read some excerpts. I promise that. I'll read a few things here. Let me see what time it is. I have time. Don't panic. Yes, we have another fan. This is how you know somebody is a fan. Great. Hey, oh, the great Alka seizure. Alka seizure. Oh wow, this is awesome. Oh, Easy Comic Reader is here. What's up? Good to see you. JLS Comics has popped in. All right. And the comedy, I like the name. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, just to give you a taste of the wonderful writings of Douglas Adams, let me see what I have marked here. Okay. Let's talk about the towel, right? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a few things to say on the subject of towels. Bring your towel. I'm wearing mine. A towel, it says, is about the most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have. Partly, it has great practical value. You can wrap it around you for warmth. You can, and as you bound across the cold moons of the Jagellan Beta, you can lie on it on the brilliant marble sand beaches of Santriginus 5, inhaling the heady sea vapors. You can sleep under it beneath the stars which shine so redly on the desert world of Kakrafafun. Use it to sail a mini raft down the slow, heavy river moth. Wet it for use as a headband in combat. Wrap it around your head to ward off noxious fumes and to avoid the gaze of the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trowel, a mind-bogglingly stupid animal. It assumes that if you can't see it, it can't see you. Daft as a brush, but very ravenous. You can wave your towel in emergencies as a distress signal, and of course, dry yourself off with it as it seems if it's clean enough. More importantly, a towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a strag equals non-hitchhiker, discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is in possession of a toothbrush, washcloth, soap, tin of biscuits, flask, compass, map, ball of string, yak spray, wet weather gear, spacesuit, etc. Furthermore, the strag will then happily lead the hitchhiker and any of those or in a dozen other items that the hitchhiker might accidentally have lost. Lend. Okay, so that's your thing about a towel. Let's see what I got here. The Babelfish, said the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy quietly, is small, yellow, and leech-like, and probably the oddest thing in the universe. It feeds on brainwave energy, received not from its own carrier, but from those around it. It absorbs all unconscious mental frequencies from its brainwave energy to nourish itself. It then excretes it into a mind of its carrier, a telepathic matrix formed by combining the conscious thought frequencies with nerve signals picked up from the speech centers of the brain and supplied within. And that's how they do that, right? Now, it is such a bizarrely improbable coincidence that anything so mind-boggling useful could have been evolved purely by chance that some thinkers have chosen to see it as a final and clinching proof of the non-existence of God. The argument goes something like this: I refuse to prove that I exist, says God, for proof denies faith, and without faith I am nothing. But, says man, the babblefish is a dead giveaway, isn't it? It cannot have evolved by chance. It proves you exist, and so therefore, by your own argument, you don't QED. Oh, dear God, says God. I hadn't thought of that, and promptly vanishes in a puff of logic. Oh, that was easy, says man, and for an encore goes on to prove that black is white and gets himself killed on the next zebra crossing him. Most leading theologians claim that this argument is a load of dingo's kidneys, but didn't stop the Ulu Colopid making a small fortune when he used it as the central theme of his best-selling book. Well, that about wraps it up for God. Meanwhile, the poor babblefish, by effectively removing all barriers to communication between different races and cultures, has caused more and more bloodier wars than anything else in human creation. What have I got here? I don't know why I did this one. Oh, this is the sperm whale and the petunia. And I'm not going to read that, right? That's going to take a little too long, but it's very enjoyable. It's probably my favorite part of the book. So long for all the fish. That talks about that. And this is Arthur speaking to Slarty Bartfist. You know, said Arthur thoughtfully, all this explains a lot of things. All through my life, I've had that strange, unaccountable feeling that something was going on in the world, something big, even sinister, and no one would tell me what it was. No, said the old man. That's just perfectly normal paranoia. Everyone in the universe has it. Everyone, said Arthur. Well, if everyone has that, perhaps it means something. Perhaps somewhere outside the universe we know. Maybe, who cares, said Slarty Bartfast. Arthur got too excited. Perhaps I'm old and tired, he continued, but I always think that the chances of finding out what really is going on are so absurdly remote that the only thing to do is to say, hang the sense out of it and just keep yourself occupied. Look at me. I designed coastlines. I got an award for Norway. So that basically, and there's more I could have read for you, but see, that basically wraps up the whole book, in my opinion, of its philosophy. We could waste time being a sperm whale, falling to the ground, trying to figure everything out, or we could just end up being the petunia who's just like, oh God, just burn out with life. Or we could do things that make us happy, be productive, win awards, to have a purpose and find our own way, and just realize there are things bigger in this universe that have nothing to do with us. We're not going to live long enough to really figure them out. And everything's not so life and death, because there's a lot going on out there that is also life and death to people and stuff. So what does it mean? What does it all mean? It doesn't matter what it's all mean. We're not going to figure it out. So we all have this big paranoia. Do we have a sense of purpose? You know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden, Arthur Dent kind of came out of his funk of the Earth blowing up when he found out that it was a big computer, and now he may be the answer. It didn't really go to his head. It kind of freaked him out because he realized people were going to take his brain out, that he could hold the secret of the universe. He never really starts thinking too much about he and Trillian being the last woman and man and trying to be Adam and Eve. Things like that. There was bigger things on his mind. And to me, that is also part of the story, because he missed what was in front of his face, with these big thoughts and everything that's out there, right? But I personally tend to add things to this as reading it, that I am a firm believer. There's a saying that I didn't make up, and you've probably seen the meme, that we are social creatures, so there is room for us to discuss what's going on and have that little bit of gossip, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter either, because in my mind, small minds gossip and big minds talk about ideas, and this book is all about ideas. Meanwhile, still pointing the finger at you like you're still sort of ridiculous, even though you're having big thoughts, and missing what's going on around you by thinking about the big things in the universe. But it's also good to know that we're part of something. You know what I mean? It's just so great. It's fantastic. You can read this on so many levels. And come up with these thoughts and interpretations and what is he saying, and it's basically very simple. You can read it for what it is, and you can stop and think about what he's saying, and it's all very entertaining. Just a great humorous satire book. All right, guys, like I said, if you like it, give me a thumbs up, let me know, share the video. Feel free to give me on the rerun, you'll have to give me if you want me to talk about something else sci-fi, let me know. um and oh wow, check this out, and then we'll get out of here. What's the funniest book you've read? I think it's probably this one, and I have quite a few. I think this is the one that I have a book by Piers Anthony from the early '70s where it's all about aliens coming into a dentist office and him having to figure out what they're wanting, which is one of the aliens, and these are like militant aliens, has a toothache, and he ends up being taken to the stars and becomes the dentist of the stars, if you will. All the aliens come to him as a dentist. That's hilarious. I'm sure I can think of some things, but I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is funny and entertaining. And I can change my mind in 5 minutes as I look around the book. Does anyone remember the Alta Vista Babelfish? I do not. Okay, guys, be excellent to each other. Check in. If you're watching in the future, leave a comment about something you want to talk about. Let me know how this went, and be excellent to each other. Enjoy your day. And always carry your towel. 42.